Okay, it looks like we've got you two back, so we'll continue. We're just at item 13, the consent agenda. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, I believe you have the consent agenda, but so far for extractions on the reports, I have 1314, report RS 2021-051, surplus property on Butternut Drive. I have extracted by myself, 1315 and 1316, surplus property located 225 Crago Lake Road, and surplus property located on East Beehive Road. We just need some clarification on the motion on those. I have, so I'm extracting 1314, 1315, and 1316. Councillor Ashmore has extracted 1318, seasonal trailer park bylaw update final report. Councillor Ashmore has also extracted 13112, the supply and delivery of power cots. And Councillor Vale has extracted 13120, the feasibility of transition of fleet to electric. Any further extractions from the consent agenda? Seeing none, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, moved by myself, second by Councillor Ashmore, that all the proposed resolutions shown in section 13.1 of the agenda be approved and adopted by council in order that they appear on the agenda and is sequentially numbered, save and except 13.1.4, 13.1.5, 13.1.6, 13.1.8, 13.1.12, and 13.120.
You got it. Thank you. Okay. You had a seconder for that?
Yeah, Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. First extraction. So 1314, 1315, and 1316. They were originally thought, those three, because there was a resolution that they were declared surplus at some point, that we needed to go back and do a 2/3 vote to go back and take them off the surplus list. Because we're just amending the surplus list, it was decided that we didn't need to do that. So the motion in the agenda is correct, and the motion on the report never got changed. So is there any issue on those three being declared surplus? And then I'll just go through them one at a time if there's not. Councillor Yeo?
Yeah, thank you. And I do disagree with 13.1.5. Crago Lake Road, that whole community up there likes to, the whole area is private. We just amended our gun bylaw to allow these people to have no hunting in the entire area. And the reasoning for not wanting to take ownership of this small piece of city property in their little community just doesn't sit well with me, basically, and I basically won't support 13.1.5 on its own. Thank you.
So these are motions to remove these properties from the surplus list, so not to go up for sale. Okay. All right. So let's do 13.1.4 first. I need a motion that report RS 2021-051 surplus property located on Butternut Drive, Lindsay, Fenland Township be received, and that resolution CR 2014-101 be amended to remove concession 5, part lot 1, plan 474, block A, pin number 63163-0203 LT from the list of properties to be declared surplus and sold. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Any questions on that report? All in favor? That's passed. 1315, that report RS 2021-052 surplus property 225 Crago Lake Road, Norland, Somerville Township be received, and that resolution CR 215-1164 be amended to remove block D, plan 494, Kawartha Lakes, pin number 63120-0560 LT from the list of properties to be declared as surplus and sold. So I need a mover and a seconder for that.
I'll move for discussion purposes.
Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Second. Councillor Richardson, you'll second that for discussion. So it's there on the list to remove, so it's not to be sold. Remove it from being declared surplus. So do you want to speak to it, or are you allowing Councillor Yeo to speak to it?
I'll let Councillor Yeo speak to it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not trying to sway anybody else's vote, but this was declared surplus, and for the private community up there, it's a perfect opportunity for them. They have the very good association to buy this piece of property, get it off the city's hands, which was the idea of the Property Disposition Task Force at the time, and to take ownership of it as an association at probably a very reasonable cost for all the cottages around that lake and make it a true private property. And it's unfortunate that they just want to use it as a boat launch, and the city still has to maintain it and all that stuff. And it's just my personal feeling. So please don't let me sway your vote. It is definitely worthy of not being sold as it is being sold. So that's just my thoughts only. So if you want to support the motion, by all means, support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm just, when I'm writing the report, the idea to not sell it was so that it could remain as a boat launch and available to the residents, that the association expressed interest in a sale, but ultimately decided not to proceed with it. So I think if we put it up for surplus, somebody else might purchase it and then do what they want with it. So I'm struggling a little. I know what you're trying to say, and I think, anyways, I will vote in favor of the motion because I think it gets the association what they're looking for up there, but I hear you. Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, just out of curiosity then, wouldn't somebody else purchasing it be a good thing? Because then, like if the association's not prepared to assist in paying for their own boat launch when they've restricted access to the entire area, if they're not prepared to pay for the boat launch, why should the city of Kawartha Lakes be on the hook? So if some outsider came in and purchased, I don't know how big the property is, and built a cottage there, well, God bless them. Because of their unwillingness to purchase it when given the opportunity, they would bear the consequences. Just a question.
I think we've had these lots in the past, and when residents have come forward and said we don't want it sold, right, we all utilize that. We have a dock, we utilize it as public access to the lake. So I think staff, when they come up with the list of surplus, found that the public was utilizing this one, so let's take it off the list and keep it open to the public. If it's sold privately, I mean, somebody could build a house on it and then they don't have access to the lake. Then we'd probably hear from them. So you're right. I mean, they have the opportunity to purchase it. They've chosen not to go that road, so I think we're offering up the second best option, which is just keep it and leave it available, but up to you guys. Any other questions on the motion? Everybody clear on the motion? It is to take it off the surplus list and just keep it in public hands, or city's hands. I'll call the question then. All in favor? I need hands. 1, 2, 3. Is that a yes, Councillor Seymour Fagan? Yes, 4, and I'll vote yes, so that's 5. So motion passes. Thank you. 1316 is that report RS 2021-053, surplus property located on East Beehive Road, Bobcaygeon, Verulam Township be received, and that resolution CR 215-1164 be amended to remove Block B, Part Lot 373, Kawartha Lakes PIN 631260428 LT, from the list of properties to be declared as surplus and sold. Much for the same argument. So, Councillor Seymour Fagan, will you move that? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Seymour Fagan, second Councillor Elmsley. Any questions, comments on that motion? All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Our next extraction is 1318, the seasonal trailer park bylaw update final report was extracted by Councillor Ashmore. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would give you a motion to just receive the report, please.
Motion that the report MLE 2021-018 seasonal trailer park bylaw update final report be received. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second by Councillor Yeo. All in favor? That's passed. Do you have a follow-up motion?
Yes, follow-up motion would be to have public input period of at least 30 days for stakeholders in the industry. And I'll speak to that to explain why I think that's a good motion.
That the bylaw be put off for 30 days for further public input?
Yes, please.
Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Thank you. If you go through the material, and I've spoken to many of the resort park owners, just quote here from Alexandra Anderson in your material here. Alexandra is Executive Director of Camping Ontario. Finally, for campgrounds and constituents to be given 8 days to provide feedback is not adequate. So that's one of my things, that the time to get response back was not adequate enough. And if you look at your other material here, from one of our families that own these resorts south of Lindsay. However, upon reading the proposal, our sector is concerned about the implication of such policies around the environmental compliance approval. It's called the ECA for short. The price hike for the license itself and the small time frame given to provide response for the proposal. And as it stands, what has been proposed means that any campground that does not currently hold an ECA and will now be closed for at least 6 months to 8 years. We asked for clear definitions around the requirements criteria, as it is unclear what the City of Kawartha Lakes is looking for specifically. So given the fact that these parks contribute so much to our economy, and I'd like to thank Director Stover, she gave me a figure, $865,000 in taxes that these parks pay into our coffers every year. And that doesn't include the people who are residents of these parks, whether they're full-time or 3-season parks. They contribute immensely to the economy, local economies. I'll give you an example in Omimi as one. So I think that it's only to be fair to the campground owners and the resort park owners that we give them a little bit more time for feedback, and just putting this on them so quickly is just not fair. I'd appreciate support if we could just give them at least 1 more month.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it?
I seconded it more for conversation and to let the mover speak. I will support it, but hesitantly, because we've extended this. This will be the 4th extension, I believe, if my math is right. And but I never want to push anything down anybody's throat, and be accused of it. So I'll support 1 more 30-day extension, and hear back from any more public that wants to speak on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to comment on this because I've been, our manager of bylaws with us, but I've been working with Aaron and some of the campground owners and the head of the Campground Association. These comments that are being read about 8 days' notice was from before we extended it for several different months. The Campground Association is fine with the changes that have been made to the bylaw, the comments about the ECA and everything. That's all been worked out. Aaron went with our solicitor, worked with the campground owners to put the proper policies in place. They don't need more time for this. This is a bylaw that has been extended several times. I talked to Lucas Lowell. He's fine. He says, we appreciated that you extended it, that we had to have it. We had an honest conversation with our bylaw manager, and we came to a compromise on what we were looking for to protect some of the campgrounds that were staying open longer than they should in the winter, and also to allow the regular campground, the 95% of the campgrounds that are doing business properly, to continue with their business. So I will say that to say that they're looking for more time or that they're not happy with where they are, that is not the information that I've received. I talked to the lady at the association. She was good with the changes. And I talked to Lucas Lowell, and he said the only thing they weren't thrilled about at this point was the increase in the fees, but that passed a month ago. They will incorporate that into their new fee bylaw for their campers next month. But in my opinion, there's zero to be gained by extending this for another month. It's been done. It's been dealt with. Aaron has done a great job at reaching out to all the owners. Maybe we could have done it a little differently at the beginning, but I think at the end we've got the result everybody was looking for, and this is a good bylaw that should go forward at this time. So, Aaron, do you have anything you want to add to that? I'll just ask you for clarification. I think I've scoped it. I've covered it. I've heard nothing from anybody. They have any issues with your amended report coming forward, and appreciate the work you've done on it. So, anything you want to add?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, you are absolutely correct in your summarization of the events. I've received no additional comments from the parks for this follow-up report.
Thank you, Aaron. Councillor Yeo, follow up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was hesitant to start with, and having heard you, I would like to withdraw my second.
Withdraw your second. Does anybody else want to second the recommendation? Last call for second. And then the motion is lost. So we have the motion to receive. Does anybody want to do a follow-up motion as printed, which we can put this to bed? Councillor Yo, or Councillor Elmsley, thank you. Councillor Yo sits in front of me, so moved by Councillor Elmsley. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Vale, thank you. Any further questions on this bylaw? Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Yesterday, I had a long conversation with Mr. Chris Rhodes. He's Ontario manager for Parkbridge, and Parkbridge is probably the largest resort owner in the city of Kawartha Lakes. There are many other great companies that, and families that own these campgrounds and own the resorts. And what he's saying is that how are we going to be enforcing these ECAs? How are we going to be doing this? So we're going to be imposing more regulations. We're going to be shutting down parks if they don't comply. We're throwing new regulations, higher fees, and I really can't support this. So I'll ask for a recorded vote because I think this industry needs to be supported. And I have had comments and of the contrary, that they don't support it. And they have a lot of concerns about it, and that concerns me. So I'm just relaying what the folks are telling me.
Aaron, I'm going to ask you another question. Are we in the business of shutting down campgrounds? Because there's comments being made that are completely, we're all supportive of our campgrounds. We know what they mean to our business, and we know 95% of them are doing business properly. And my understanding was we've come up with a good compromise that meets what we need to do to enforce it and gives them the enforcement, or gives us the enforcement, which is really checking a box in some cases and getting you the information you need, because they need to deal with the Ministry of the Environment and not the municipality in most of these cases. Can you comment on that?
Through the mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you're stealing all the wind out of my sails here. But we did consult with everybody and we reached out to the ECA. The actual requirement from the MOE for the ECA, we've removed that completely out of the bylaw. What we've done is we've created an intake checkbox process, and we're simply asking the parks if they're in compliance or if they've had any MOE issued orders. And so it's a yes or no answer. And then when the application comes in or the renewal comes in, it's circulated out directly to those agencies, and that would result in, I guess, if there's violations that could impact the status of their license, but we're not looking to close any parks down.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on the report before I call the question? A follow-up, Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to the manager. Could you just give us the exact percentage that the rates are going up for the fees? Do you have an average rate that are going up?
That was passed in our consolidated fees bylaw 2 months ago. So it's already done. I think they went from, go ahead, Mr. Manager, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I believe the number was in the neighborhood of $160 that the rates went up.
From 240 to 400, I think it was, something along those lines. It's in the report, along with everything else. Any other questions? I'm going to call the question. Oh, you wanted a recorded vote, sorry. Councillor, a recorded vote requested by Councillor Ashmore. Go ahead, Madam Clerk. Just clarify for the motion, Madam Clerk, that the bylaw 213-148 as amended, being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern seasonal trailer park businesses in Kawartha Lakes be repealed and replaced, and that the recommended bylaw attached as Appendix D to report MLE 2021-018 be brought forward to Council for approval. Recorded vote requested by Councillor Ashmore. Go ahead.
Councillor Ashmore?
Opposed?
Councillor Dunn? In favor. Councillor Vale?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor O'Reilly?
In favor?
Councillor Seymour Fagan?
In favor.
Councillor Yo?
In favor?
Councillor Elmsley?
In favor.
Councillor Richardson?
In favor.
Mayor Latham?
In favor. Motion passes 8-1. 8 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Item 13.1.12, is the next extraction, which is a purchasing report for the supply and delivery of power cots. Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Yeah, just a motion to receive, and I agree with the report. I'm just a question to staff. Are we looking at any funding for these types of expenses? Like we seem to be getting all these expenses heaped upon us here. Like, does the Ontario government help us out on these expenses? And is this what every other municipality has to pay, all these supplies now, as well as the ambulances, of course? But it just seems that we don't get much help on these, and these are expensive items, and obviously they're needed. But do we get any help from any other governments that mandate these?
Chief, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll attempt to answer that. I don't know if anyone from finance would like to correct me if I go off astray, but yes, we are funded 50% from the province. The finance department moves a portion of the grant into the capital budget to offset by the 50% funding. To answer the question about other services, yes, we're all in exactly the same boat. When we replace capital here at the City of Kawartha Lakes, we may have a different capital replacement schedule, so the frequency at which we buy may be different, and it is. We've extended it a bit on our vehicles and our stretchers to be as fiscally responsible as we can, but it's the same situation in all services in Ontario. So the answer is yes and yes in terms of funding and others being in the same boat.
Thank you.
That's fine. I'll move as printed.
Moved by Councillor Ashmore, the report as printed. Second, Councillor Yeo. Any further questions? All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. And our last extraction is 13-120, which is the feasibility report on the transition of fleet to electric. Councillor Vail.
Thank you. I'll give you a motion that staff be directed to proceed with the NRCan grant application submission process and begin to implement the plan and begin the process to start including in future capital budgets. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it. Thank you.
Can you do that recommendation and the receive as well? Receive the report and then that follow-up? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Vail, second by Councillor Richardson. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the report that that staff put together is very informative, and Rod's gone to a lot of detail in what's available out there as far as grants, what the opportunities are for transitioning different parts of the fleet and timing, what that means environmental wise and targets and everything for the whole municipality. And at the very end of all of that, you know, when he's summarizing, and it is the case, right, that the changeover is imminent. This is the direction that things are going in. So we can be part of this at a time when there are funding opportunities to help assist us, or we can sit in the back row and wait, and at some point these grants are not going to be available, and we're going to be on our own to do this. So I think at this time, you know, we're at a point where we can gradually start to ease into this at our comfort level and at a pace that is affordable to the municipality with assistance. I think this is the right thing to do at the right time.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, do you wish to speak to it?
I will, thank you, and I'm in support as well. Absolutely, this report talks about the future, and you're looking at other municipalities around us that are, you know, taking that direction, and you are seeing in our communities a lot more EVs. So I think, as Councillor Vail has stated, that looking at this grants for funding is a good direction at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Helmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good motion, and I support it. I have a question about the charging capability within the city and how that may affect things and how it would be handled. So I'm wondering if somebody from staff could could address that.
Yeah, let me get the director. There's Director Robinson. I don't know if you heard the question, Director. If you did, go ahead. If not, we'll get Councillor Helmsley to repeat it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the council, just looking for a bit of clarity on the question. So you're looking at charging capability. Are you talking about the power grid itself, or are you talking about the actual infrastructure to like the charging stations?
I'm referring to charging stations.
Okay, thank you, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So it's discussed in the report to take a look at what alternatives are. So there's 3 different levels of charging stations that have different levels of power and corresponding then times for charging vehicles. What staff are recommending within the report is to look at the potential of installation of anywhere from 20 to 40 charging ports strategically placed around the city to look at supporting electrical vehicle use. Those could be placed on municipal property or in public areas accessible to the public or only to municipal vehicles, depending on what we're looking for. So again, the report is very high level. It does get into potential phasing opportunities as we move forward in the conversion to electric vehicles. But right now, staff are effectively recommending that we look for about 20 to 40 charging stations within the city. There's grants, if successful, that would supply funding for about 50% of that, which would bring the municipal contribution to those stations anywhere to $150,000 to $375,000 in capital. It should be noted that that capital is unbudgeted right now, so we've included the Director of Engineering Corporate Assets with respect to the future capital plans to incorporate those considerations in future budget.
Thank you for that. And just a follow-up on that, would those charging stations be available to the public, or would they only be for city use?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So that's a discussion that we can have with council. Obviously, if we're looking to make these stations specifically for municipal purposes, municipal use, those would likely be stationed at a location that would be available only to municipal resource. However, there is recommendations in the report that if there's a larger plan to make the municipality electric ready, it would be wise to have those stations again strategically located around the city and available for public use. So as we have tourism and other activities, people could charge their vehicles while they were partaking in activities in local venues. So could be either.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I could address a question to the mover.
Of course, yeah, go ahead.
The recent discussions and the U.S. stance on electric vehicles, do you see it having a negative impact on electrical vehicle sales in Canada and in the industry in general?
I'll do my best. Well, right now, from what I see from my business is the manufacturers in this country have already made a commitment to the Canadian government as far as changing over, right? And those manufacturers have made similar commitments to the American government, and targets have been set, right, to the point that most of those manufacturers are talking that they will be 90 to 95% of their production capacity being electric vehicles by 2030 to 2035, right? I'm seeing in our own industry, right, that by 2025, and dealers are already going through this exact process for our own stores, and some of them are further down the road, like for General Motors, for Cadillac dealers. By 2025, the conversation is that to buy a new Cadillac, you won't buy a new gas engine Cadillac. The only offerings will be electric, and those dealers are completely in the process of switching over, right? It's, you know, whether you like it, agree with it, or whatever, it's here and it's moving forward, right? And I think the smart thing to do is to start planning and putting the infrastructure in place, because these things do take time, and it's just one more thing that we need to keep in mind, right? Like we've just finished doing the downtown in Lindsay, and we're in the process of finishing Fenland, and there's conversations about Omimi. You know, these things should be part of those conversations, right?
Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Question through you to the mover. Does the motion include hybrid vehicles as well, or just electric? Going straight from petrol powered to electric, or are we going to be including hybrid vehicles as well in the fleet for the city?
This motion and report and recommendation is dealing with electric vehicles. I think hybrid is a totally different thing. We're talking about infrastructure to accommodate electric vehicles in the fleet, right? There's no infrastructure needed for hybrid vehicles.
Thank you. So just for my clarification, the motion that you're proposing, it's to apply for the grant and is to implement this in a capital budget in 2023, not to implement it in 2022 and take it from a reserve, correct? So it's a future capital budget, apply for the grant, see where we go, and when the next capital budget comes forward, we'll know where we stand. Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Vail or on the motion?
It's not really a question, just a comment. I just want to thank staff, the authors of the report. I think it's an excellent report and in depth, and I think we're certainly going down the right road with this motion.
Thank you. Do you want to sum up, Councillor Vail?
I think I've said everything to it, but I'll echo Deputy Mayor O'Reilly's. I think Rod did an excellent job on this report, for sure.
Thank you. Is everybody clear on the motion? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Okay, we'll move over to a few reports we have extracted from consent already. 13.2.1 is the motion for the proposed disposition of lane leading to Jesse Avenue, adjacent to 69 Rose Street in Pleasant Point. This was brought forward. There was some discussion at the last council meeting about selling either this allowance or a portion of it because of the encroachment of the building. We weren't sure if we needed a reconsideration, so it was deferred to this meeting. We now know that we don't need a reconsideration to do it. So I'm just going to ask for a motion at this point that report RS 2021-050, proposed disposition of lane leading to Jesse Avenue adjacent to 69 Rose Street, Pleasant Point, be received. And then we can figure out where you want to go from there. Moved by Councillor Yeo, second by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. All in favor? And that's passed. So solicitors joining us, Councillor Yeo, do you want a follow-up motion?
Yes, and thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I read the report, and it is what I was looking for last meeting, and the alternative to be considered. I'd like to move the resolutions in there that staff be directed to commence the public notification process to stop up, close, and sell a portion of Lane E unregistered plan number 123, being the easternmost entrance exit to Jesse Avenue located adjacent to the west lot line of 69 Rose Street, and that the sale be conditional upon the purchaser installing fencing to the city's satisfaction and at its own expense to delineate the easterly and westerly boundaries of the portion of the lane remaining for public passage post-sale.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Yeo, second. Councillor Ashmore. Go ahead, Councillor Yeo, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, and I'm glad that we got it straightened out, and that it still leaves, my math is correct, close to over 20 feet or more for public access. It's not a road, it's a walking path, which is more than adequate for walking. I understand there could be a drainage issue, but hopefully that doesn't come to fruition, but public access is key here, and it solves two problems, one being the landowner's encroachment, and the second one being the public's access to Jesse Avenue. And I believe they're both taken care of with this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. So just for clarification, it leaves 5.47 meters as per the report, probably just under 20 feet. So lots of room. You're correct. Councillor Ashmore, you second it. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good situation here if we do that this way, because it's the only way to help these people out. They're really in a jam, and this is the only alternative right now. This gives them that extra room that they need to get their permit, and it also leaves a portion of that easeway or that access to Jesse Avenue from Rose Street to Jesse Avenue. It still leaves public access, so it's a kind of a win-win. There is a neighbor that would like to purchase the other side, but for now, I think this is the best alternative to leave the 5.4 meters and allow these people to, to get enough land that they need to get their building permit and still leave some public access.
Thank you. Solicitor is on the line with us. If anybody needs any clarification on anything, are there any further questions on this motion? Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the solicitor. Down the road, is there any chance that the neighbor on the west side could purchase, or is that pretty well ruled out? Because there was an expression of interest that they would be able to purchase a portion of that 5.4 meters, but
I'm just going to suggest that we leave that as if they do a further application, it's really nothing to do with this report. It is leaving some public access, so they would have to look at that individually if you want to close that access off. But I really don't want to confuse the two issues today, if that's okay. So if the resident wants to bring forward an application to our land management, that's probably the best route to go to get it in the system. Any other questions on the motion or for the solicitor? I'll call the question then. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. We got off the hook easy, Robin. 1322 was extracted a discharge of firearms bylaw. We had a discussion at the last council meeting. There was a little bit of discussion back and forth about some clauses being removed, and I was confused, for lack of a better word, so I asked that it be deferred till we could get some clarification to this meeting. Here it is. I'm going to turn it over. Councillor Dunn, the motion is in front of you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give you a motion to approve the agenda, or the item as printed, and if I get a seconder, I'll explain.
As printed, thank you. Second by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was some confusion. A lot of it was mine. I was still reading the second version of the bylaw as opposed to the third version of the bylaw. And the offending sections in the latest bylaw had been removed. The bright side is, so I do apologize to the manager for confusing everybody, but the bright side is it gave me the opportunity to reach out to the shooting community and to the agriculture community that had complained about the original one. And I circulated a copy of the proposed bylaw. They've read it over, and they're quite content with the way it's written. So I'm more than happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak to it? No. Any further questions or comments on this bylaw? Call the question then. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. 1323 is off-road vehicle use and city roads task force final recommendations, as a report by Director Robinson. I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Dunn to give us a bit of background and just walk us through what you're looking at as the chair of the task force. So go ahead.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To start off with, I'll give you a motion as printed. With a question, do we also have to approve the recommendations that it be approved, or that it be turned over to staff to come back with recommendations?
We do, yeah. So
Okay.
why don't we just do a motion to receive, and then you can go through the different recommendations. We'll pass those, and then
all right.
we'll come back and you can make the final one that it be dissolved at that point. So let's start with a motion to receive, and then you can go from there. Perfect. Moved by Councillor Dunn, second by Councillor Richardson. All in favor? That's passed. Follow-up, go ahead.
Okay, so on November the 26th, we had which I hope will be our last meeting. There were no further recommendations put forward as to proposing alternative or different routes, and the discussion was focused on Once this pilot project is approved and moved forward, how do we actually do the monitoring? We had a deputation from a gentleman by the name of Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris put forward some ideas, and he was also kind enough to forward those in writing to the director so that we have a permanent record of what those ideas were. The members of the task force also put forward recommendations, which are all written in the report. And finally, after about an hour's discussion, or 3/4 of an hour's discussion, we figured the best way to handle it was to give all those recommendations to staff and let them come back with a monitoring process, including which division is the best division to do the monitoring or be the safekeeper of the information. There's going to be 3 enforcement branches that are involved. And the key thing was to collect all the information in one place, so that if the OPP got a call, or if Kawartha Lakes Police Services got a call, they would still conduct their normal investigation. I'm not suggesting that the investigation would be turned over to municipal law enforcement, but they would conduct their investigation, but they would make MLE aware of what they were doing, so that it could be entered into the database. And then at the end of the first year, it seemed appropriate at that point for the manager, assuming that they do appoint the manager of MLE to be the gatherer of information. Then he could present a report, and council of the day, either this council or, depending on how quick we get the report back, or our successors can make decisions and move forward. That certainly doesn't prevent, if something should come up in September or August, it doesn't prevent or preclude council from taking an immediate action if something should happen, but it does formalize the process that we'll use as far as the monitoring goes when the time comes. So you've got my motion to receive, and I'll leave it there.
Do you want to move the recommendations under the alternatives? There's 5 that's there about how it's going to be monitored from staff. Are you looking to
Yes.
want to move those, and let's
Yep.
get them on the record, and then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to read them then, if you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'd have to find the page, and you go ahead.
Page 747, yeah, that staff establish a monitoring program for ROV traffic on city roads to track and record time, date, and location of complaints, caller information, complaint details, and frequency. That staff determine what can be feasibly monitored and reported on, and bring back a report to council in Q1 2022 with an update before the pilot starts. That the ORV traffic monitoring program include traffic counts 2 or 3 times minimum throughout the pilot, ideally on weekends and long weekends. And that staff report back on the ORV traffic monitoring program in Q1 2023 after the first year of the pilot program, and that the ORV task force be dissolved with thanks. So will you move those 5 recommendations?
I will.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dunn, second by Councillor Richardson. I think you've spoken to them. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Richardson? Do you have anything else you want to add? Go ahead.
No, the only thing after we pass this motion is I would like you to thank the task force, because we had 5 civilian members on that, and while councillors are accustomed to the to and froing of politics, the civilian members are not so much, and they were yeomen in standing up for what they thought was the correct way to go, and I'd like to, either you or myself to thank them personally.
I think you've just done a pretty good job of that, but
Thank you.
We'll see where the motion goes. Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor. The timing of ATVs on the roads during the trial period, is that dusk to dawn, or is that not addressed?
That's already been previously addressed in motions passed by council. I'd have to guess, but I think it's 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock, or 9 o'clock till 7 o'clock. But there is a time that council approved way back in June as to times and stipulations as far as when they could run. It coincides actually with when the trails are open.
With the trail bylaw. It's the same as the trail bylaw, so it doesn't change.
Well,
Yeah.
it's just up north, there is I think, specific times, and I just wanted to make sure that we were
It's the sa-
being consistent throughout. And bringing back a report in the first quarter on how we're going to monitor all this, I think is really a good thing. And, you know, some of the people who have made deputations and who have asked for things, one of the things they're talking about is a public meeting. Did we not have a couple of public meetings, a couple of meetings of council where people came and spoke and could ask questions?
Well, public meetings, because of COVID, are a little bit different. I think what they're alluding to in the submissions were the old-fashioned things where you could get, 200, 300, 400 people into the armories, and everybody stood up front, and the exchange was held in that manner. The task force itself, I don't know how many times we've had deputations at council, but we had one major meeting where we had 26 people, and the 26 all went through it. It would be on the deputation format as opposed to a Q&A format, because I don't think we have a procedure for a Q&A format on deputations, but it was on a deputations format, but we didn't have that traditional, everybody gathered down at the armories and two sides duke it out. No, we didn't have that.
And I guess one of my last questions would be, on the rural roads in the south, is it expected or is it stipulated that they have to drive in the ditches, or are they on the side of the road?
No. Okay, so I'm going to show my lack of experience. I'm going to show my lack of experience with ATVs. I don't think the expectation was ever that they were going to drive in the ditches, but I don't know.
I think the bylaw will probably spell out that the expectation is to use the shoulder of the road.
Yeah.
But maybe we can get some clarification from Director Robinson. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council, expectations of ORVs on municipal roads would be to share the road. So they would be treating or driving on the edge of the traveled surface of the road, just like any other shared user. And further to Councillor Elmsley's inquiry about timing, Councillor Resolution CW 2021-124 identifies that the time permitted is between 7 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. May 1st to November 30th, which aligns with those other trails.
I guess my last question has to do the speed in towns. It's 20, and where the posted highway speed is 80, or where it is 80, they would do 50.
No, the regulations, the Ontario regulations are that in any area where the speed limit is 50 kilometers or less, the maximum speed an ATV can operate at is 20 kilometers. And in areas where the speed limit is greater than 50 kilometers per hour, they operate at 50%, half of what the posted speed limit is.
My final question, I guess, is are side-by-sides included in this, or do they have separate rulings?
No, our mandate when we first started off was to join the trails. There are no trails within the areas of our discussion where side-by-sides are currently permitted on the trails. So because there are no side-by-sides permitted, they were never included in the discussion. It was just strictly ATVs.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe those speed limits are set by the Highway Traffic Act as well, so it's not really up for debate. It's if you're going to allow them on the roads, here's how fast they're allowed to go. So, Councillor O'Reilly, go ahead.
Just a further question. I think where some of the confusion around the public meetings where I think They thought there was a chance to be part of the task force. They thought they were public meetings, the task force meetings you were having, and really the opportunity for people to discuss it was at the public meetings that we held in the council chambers or by Zoom. But I think there was some discussion that they felt as though they were having public meetings in secrecy, or they couldn't comment when the task force was having meetings, which I don't think is any different than our other task force that we have, and that's what they are, is task force.
And we had public meetings. I mean, just to follow up on that, you know, whether they were through the task force, they're open to the public. We had, last month, we had a special committee of the whole meeting just to deal with these rural road issues. There's no limit on deputations at a special committee of the whole meeting, so we could have had 20 deputations, and it was put out there. So we've had 3 or 4 committee of the whole meetings with those recommendations going to council, which is another opportunity, you know, for people to counsel. So I'm like you, when I read some comments that there's been no opportunity for public input, you know, I'm going to say that's not exactly. I think there might be an expectation, as Councillor Dunn mentioned, to, you know, gather in a room and have a discussion. Unfortunately, that wasn't, but, you know, we're trying to keep the business of the city moving ahead. So there was lots of opportunity for the public to comment. We've heard the correspondence, we've received the emails. That's all public input, and council's made a decision, and we'll sort of go from there. So any follow-up further questions regarding the motion? Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you. Through you to the mover there, Councillor Dunn. I talked to him about this here. I had a question about if a proposed route, in this case, Omimi, needed a slight tweak. Would that be something that can be brought in a memo to council, or how can that be incorporated or changed?
We've just passed the route for Omimi earlier in the meeting. So the route was passed in the committee of the whole recommendations. There was a route in the Omimi area. That's all been passed, done, finalized by council. So I would suggest we let the pilot project run with what's brought forward. If there's any tweaks after the first year that need to be made, then that would be the time to bring them forward. Thank you. Any further questions or comments on the route? Sorry, Councillor Seymour Fagan, did you have a question? I just see your hand. Nope, you're good. Okay. Do you want to sum up, Councillor Dunn?
No, I think we've pretty much done it, and thank you for the opportunity to work on the task force.
Thank you. Call the question then. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Yeah, and I will, you know, to your comments, Councillor Dunn, I will, as that motion is now passed, I will thank the members on the task force. You know, some of them haven't been on task forces before. It wasn't an easy discussion. It wasn't an easy conversation. You know, there's no right or wrong. There's just opinions, and I think a discussion was had. I didn't agree myself with all the recommendations, but I respect that those were recommendations that came to council, and council had an opportunity to hear from the public and make final recommendations as they've done. And now we'll make sure, hopefully, council, task force, residents, ATV users, Lindsay residents, rural residents, we can now work together to implement a pilot project that is safe and do it properly, monitor it properly, and then if we need to make adjustments as we go, we can do it. But perhaps we can get past the argument that this shouldn't happen because it's now going to happen. So let's work together to make sure it's done as safely and as effectively as possible, and we'll see where it goes from there. So thank you to everyone who was involved. We appreciate your time and efforts on that task force, and the members of the public who took the time to contribute and share their comments with us as well. So thank you. We'll move down to item 14, which is petitions. We have none. Other new business, we have none. Bylaws. Are there any extractions from the bylaws? Councillor Yo, I believe you have that, sir.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Elmsley that the bylaws shown in section 16.1 of the agenda, namely items 16.1.12 and including 16.1.26, be read a first, second, third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's passed. We have item 17 is notice of motion. We have no notice motion. I need a motion to adoption of the closed session agenda, please. Councillor Dunn and Yo, all in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in closed session items? Seeing none, at this point of the meeting, City Council will go into closed session to consider items under Section 18.3 of the agenda. All remaining staff, with the exception of the CAO, City Clerk, and City Solicitor, are now instructed to leave the electronic meeting at this time. As per our procedural bylaw requirements, I'm asking all remaining participants in our meeting today to confirm to me by raising your hand that you are in a private room where no other person can overhear the deliberations and your internet connection is secure and not publicly accessible. So we have our solicitor, Robin Carlson, agrees. Councillor Seymour Fagan, can you confirm that? Thank you. Is nobody else joining us today? Ron, is that it? Okay. Thank you. I got the mover to go into closed and carried. At this point, the meeting broadcast will now end for members of the public watching on Cogeco TV. No, I don't have a motion to go into closed. Sorry. That council, I need a mover and a seconder that council convene into closed session at 2:25 p.m. pursuant to section 239 bracket 2 of the Municipal Act in order to consider matters identified in section 18.3 of the regular council meeting agenda of Tuesday, December 14th, 2021, namely item 18.3.1, 2 and including 18.3.3. Moved by Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? That's passed. At this point, the meeting broadcast will now end for members of the public watching on Cogeco, Your TV cable. The live stream of the meeting on YouTube will now be temporarily paused for members of the public. When closed session is complete, the live stream of the meeting will resume to address the remaining open session items on the agenda. Why don't we take 5 minutes to stretch and we'll come back and we'll deal with closed session. Okay, we're back online. We're back in session. We're out of close, so I'm going to turn it over to the clerk for matters from closed session. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Reporting on matters from closed session. So item 18.3.1, that the confidential closed session minutes from November 19th, 2021 regular council meeting were approved. Item 18.3.2, report regarding a landlocked parcel adjacent to 28 Pickerel Point Road. Staff advised council of pending litigation affecting the title to property at 28 Pickerel Point Road and received instructions concerning the same. Item 18.3.3, staff provided information and received instruction pertaining to a contractual dispute between the city and Marwan Industrial Water Limited, formerly Ecodyne Limited, contract 19-Q01.
Thank you. Item 20 is a confirming bylaw. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Riley, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a regular council meeting held Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Yeo, second by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? That's passed. Wish everyone a great holiday. Have a good Christmas. You deserve it. Been a tough couple of years, but get some downtime and enjoy, and we'll see you all in the new year. Good health. Same to you, Councillor Seymour Fagan. You look cold up there. Are you okay? You got the heat on in the house?
Just not used to it, that's all.
Okay, we didn't hear much from you today, but thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the new year. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.